This episode is unreal. It's with the legendary Don Hobbs. And Don, tell us what we are going to learn.
Glenn, we are going to talk about attitude. We are going to talk about, why would we talk about attitude? It's your attitude show.
Right.
We're going to talk about attitude. We're going to talk about how big you really are and how you come out the other side, no matter where you find yourself in making it the biggest life you could ever imagine.
What is the roadmap to defeat self-sabotage, negative thinking, and learned helplessness? In these unprecedented times, you must get connected, get growing, get certain, and get attitude. The Get Attitude Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a legend, somebody that I didn't know impacted my life at such a high level. And chances are when you get to meet this guest, you are going to sit there and go, oh my God, this guy impacted my life, and I didn't even know it. And who is this guy? Well, this guy, his name is Don Hobbs. Don began his seminar career at 18 when he went to work internationally with the renowned speaker, and really people who feel that he was the father of speaking and personal development. And I have listened to 1,000 hours of Jim Rohn. He was one of the true pioneers in global development. He set records working with Jim. He worked his way to become president of Jim Rohn Productions at the early age of 25. In 1986, Don left that position and co-founded what was known as Hobbs Herder Advertising, an industry interrupter. And that's what we're talking about. We are interviewing in season 2 innovators, right, and disruptors. And we have a true innovator and disruptor and interrupter in this thing called the real estate and personal development business. He started this thing called the Soul Institute, 25 years. I think he worked in that. He worked with Gary Keller, right? He worked with Gary Keller developing BOLD, and I've been through the BOLD training, believe it or not, and also helped him with the One Thing, which, Gary is a legend and unbelievable. He also has something called the Care Network and Wildfire Rescue. I'm going to talk to him a little bit about giving. Don has spoken to over 1 million realtors. He has developed and has completed, right, one of the biggest massive real estate training gurus, bottom line, in the world. The Realtor Magazine named Don one of the top 25 most influential people in the real estate business. Now look, I can go on and on and on about this guy, but you know what? Why don't we just listen to him? And I'm telling you, hold on to your seats, because this he's done it all, and he is now the new president of Success Magazine in his new role, Success Enterprises. And boy, I can't wait to see what he does with this periodical, something that I've been reading and subscribed to for years. So with that big, long introduction, let's get some attitude with Don Hobbs. Don, welcome to The Gap.
Oh my God, Glenn, I can't believe all that was in my description. I'm totally impressed. I can take my bow and go home. Hey, it's so good to be here with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, well, go ahead.
I love the work. I love the work that you're doing, and I love that this revolves around attitude, because you mentioned Jim Rohn. It all started with me early on, but that was really the foundation for my whole career, really. So glad to be here. Really, it's an honor.
Well, you and I had similar paths. I was a Division I athlete that. I had a family start me at 18, and I got right into the business. So me and you were both hitting the streets early. And so, I'd love to know, how does a guy at 18 years old take on and engage one of the foremost speakers? Like, number one, what was your attitude when you did that? That's going to be a great story. But one thing I always like to start asking is this. I really want to know, who was your attitude coach growing up, right? Or like, who formed your attitude before we get to you being 18 and doing that?
It's a great question. Thanks for asking. I think the biggest thing I would say, Jim became my attitude coach. Honestly,
Sure.
he was the start of that, and I'm not sure where it came from, but I had a winning attitude. I didn't play college sports. In fact, I left, school at 18 and all of that. But for me, it was about, my grandfather was a good influence. He was a fourth grade educated man who had a business and a bunch of real estate and whatever, and that was a good thing. He taught me how to treat people and how to be, an adult, and they called me premature. I was kind of adult-like at age 12, 13. It was like doing stuff. But I think the biggest thing is I knew that I wanted more, and I knew that where I was raised was not how I was going to be. And that was a big part of it. I was raised, I always say I wasn't raised on the other side of the tracks. The tracks were there and I was just this side of it, but I was right there in the the kind of the tough area of Los Angeles, and didn't have a family that had a lot of money, and so it was really a challenging time, and I just knew that I wanted more. I became a great student. I became big at whatever I did because I wanted to excel, and I'm not sure where that came from. My dad wasn't like that. My mom, a great heart, but that she wasn't a striver. And so I hit Jim Rohn, and it was like, in fact, she was the one who bought me the ticket, and she said, "This guy reminds me of you," which I thought was really funny. Now I look back in hindsight and go, Rohn reminds her of, right? And I'm like, so I went to see him, and I remember walking into the West and South Coast Plaza. You've probably been there, this big hotel and a ballroom, and I'd never been in a hotel with chandeliers. I mean, that was way beyond where I was raised and how I was raised, and saw this guy speak, and I was just blown away. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to be him. I was totally taken. It was, it was a date night, and I'm sitting there in a seminar, like, who in the world wants to be in a seminar I think it was a Saturday night, and I was taking copious notes in a stenographer's notebook. You know what that looks like?
I did.
The old, right?
Oh,
19 pages of notes, and it blew my mind. And I was like, I want to do that. So that's how it all started for me there.
I've always said especially when we train people, and I know you've heard this, the best way to show someone you're listening is to take notes. And my God, I have vaults of yellow pad paper from all the people that we've been. Now, you did mention this one guy named your grandfather, interestingly enough, that just came out. I'd love to know his name. I'd love to, I know that you told me that he owned real estate and was a bit entrepreneurial, but is there a backstory? Is there something about when you think of your grandfather, and again, give us his name, because I love to give credit to grandpas. It's amazing.
Antonio Garcia.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. And so what was his deal? What was his fire? What did he say to you that maybe did it? Or what did, when you look at him and when you think about it, it's time to give tribute to him. I'd love to hear about him and his story maybe.
He was uneducated, right? Fourth grade education, but he came over, he was Arizona. My grandmother was from the other side, from Mexico, and they came up to Los Angeles and made that journey. And he just started making stuff happen. And way back when, working with his hands and working in somebody's bike shop, he ended up buying a Schwinn bike shop. And we all know Schwinn.
Wow.
And so he built Tony's bike shop, which, by the way, I don't know how many years later, because I think it was started in the 50s. It's still Tony's bike shop.
Are you kidding? How cool.
Legendary, because he was the rock star of that area. But it was kind of fun because he was a very simple man. So he had simple lessons, and he taught me a lot about how to treat people with respect. And he taught me a lot about how to see the possibilities in opportunity, and how, that defeat was only defeat if you laid down and let it happen, right? He was the one that kind of spurred me on. And we were actually involved in the trap shooting industry. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Interesting.
I was a professional trap shooter at 16.
Wow.
But he had trained me from the early age. And so, I was around this men's sport, this kind of, I was around this men's sport, and got a chance to play with some big time players and was really good at it. And so it looked like it was going to be a direction for me, but it was also about being around these adults and not acting like a kid, not being just a little boy and, all that stuff. It was kind of a chance for me to grow up faster.
That is cool. Don, here's what I want to know. I've never had or interviewed a champion trap shooter. What's the attitude? What is the attitude lesson of a champion trap shooter? What can people learn from about their attitude?
It's an individual sport, and as many individual sports, it's all focus and concentration. And in that game, to win, it's clay pigeons, right? So it's you can rank in terms of 100 shots, right? That's how we did things. So at the high levels, and if you miss one, you're out.
Yeah.
So you've got to run 100. So it's never-ending focus. It's there's no mistakes allowed, and of course weather conditions but you've got to see. See the targets broken. You've got to mentally see what you want to happen. I mean, there was a lot of visualization. I visualized a lot. Yeah.
So you're telling me that if you hit 57 clays in a row and you miss one, then they say you're out of here, dude?
No, but 99 isn't going to rank anything on the scoreboards when you're at the top level.
So you got to pop 100 in a row?
And then have what they call shoot-offs, like playoffs.
You're kidding
to shoot
me.
Sometimes another 25, 50, 100 more. The big championships where they had many thousands of people, you'd have to go sometimes 200-300 in a row to.
And you were a champion at this?
Yeah, well, I never did 300 in a row. So let's stop there. I was a state champion in California.
Well, there we go.
And it was not a national deal, but I was. My intention was to go to the Olympics. My intention was to go to the Olympics. And, in those days we had amateur and professional, and I was winning so much, and I'm going, I need to make that money. I want to make the cash. And I gave in and took the cash and gave up my amateur status.
So it was your success monetarily that, do you ever regret that, Don? Or do you just say, screw it, I made enough money, I'm good?
No, I absolutely think I made the right move for the time. If you think about the twists and turns and the forks in the road and I could have gone this way, could have gone this way. Man, I've been very fortunate. I've been very fortunate. I love
do you ever skeet anymore and shoot anymore?
Hardly ever, because unless I can win, I don't like playing.
A very common trait among successful people, right?
Yeah, I don't like just mediocrity, so it's hard unless I get back to do 1,000%. So it's really a funny question.
So let's go to 18. You do this, Jim Rohn, and I was the same way, right? Personal development, complete nerd, can't listen to enough at all. Nope. And I have them all. Talk to us a little bit about, in 7 years, you become the president of Jim Rohn, right? Of his company. So number one, I want you to tell me, how do you define attitude? And number two, tell me about those 7 years on how you stood at the bridge as a new guy and then became president after 7 years. So define attitude and then walk us through that journey and some of the big attitude lessons there.
Cool. For me, attitude I think I got some of this. I'm not sure if it's exactly what he said, but my takeaway from it was attitude is the filter through which all of life happens. So all things good and all things bad are currently present, all the time present. If you watch the news and focus on that, you're going to go, the world's a disastrous place. If you focus on the right stuff and get around the right people, you go, wow, the world's an awesome place. And so to me, attitude is really about how we see the world and allow ourselves a filter through which everything comes and helps us to make the choices about what we believe. And so, at an ultimate level, it's our beliefs, right? It becomes our beliefs.
I love it. And I'll rephrase my question because this will be better. Number one, I want to know the lowest point in those 7 years you had with Jim Rohn, right? And then number two, I want to know the highest point in those. And then that way you don't have to tell me the story because I may ask you that later. So lowest point, highest point, getting to where you were going.
Absolutely. Right off the bat, I sold nothing. So I'm in straight commission and I sold nothing. I mean, if I sold anything, I sold all the guns and gold and things that I had bought when I was making big bucks as a professional trap shooter.
Wow.
And so I sold everything to stay in the game. And I remember my mom calling me going, "Hey, you should get a job." And and I remember even a time, and I discussed this, I've had her in audiences and said this out loud. And that is, I remember saying to her, "I can't be around you right now because I have to keep my own attitude up, and I can't be around and hold mine and yours up." So
Right.
I just, right now, I'm like out. And, it was a little bit of time, just a few months, maybe a year or so before I kind of started getting my feet underneath me and started to see what was going on. I don't know if you know this or not, but during that same time, big gawky kid came along and worked for Jim too. His name is Tony Robbins.
Yes.
So we were there in those early days, right? And we were both flailing and failing but we had such an interesting group, and I absolutely saw that there was success in there.
Yes.
And so even though I was not there, I knew that was what I wanted, and I saw where I was going. And literally, there was a part where I was like, I'm around all these players, and there was some big, the kind of the founder of Herbalife came out of there. There was some really big players that came out of our core. And it was just cool to be around them. And I began to see a path and, learn from each experience and learn from each person. And it was awesome to be in that environment. And of course, and I know that being around, winners and people that have that kind of attitude is a big piece of success, right? It's hard to be the only one with a great attitude.
Sure.
If you're around a bunch of people that are pulling you down, the crabs, as we like to call them, right? The crabs in the bucket.
Yes.
But I was around a bunch of winners, and we had a chance to really start growing. So that was the beginning of it, and it was hard. I mean, Glenn, I'm telling you, I thought, I didn't need my mom telling me to quit because I was thinking about quitting. I won't say daily. I'm sure it was not that, because we had some wins, but I would say monthly. I was definitely going, is this really what I should be doing? But I kept seeing a longer picture. And I kept thinking, I want to do that. I want to be him. I want to be like that, And plus we got to hang around with Rohn after all the seminars and all that stuff. And it began to formulate not only a relationship, but also, a greater, deeper understanding, personal development. I'm reading more books. I'm beginning to evolve. I took a speed reading course. I was devouring books, which is a large part of my growth at an early, at a young age.
Wow.
A lot of it was other people's experiences because I didn't have them.
Right.
Right. What did I know about stuff?
So go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So, obviously Tony's crushing things. And did he leave before you came president, or was he, or were you? So was he, did you just did you know he was maybe special, or were you like, what was your gut instinct on him? And what was his attitude back then?
Oh my gosh, he was undefeatable. He was a renegade, a bit of a renegade. You can't imagine that, I'm sure, knowing him as you probably do.
Yeah.
And, he thought big, he went big. And for that reason, he flopped huge. He's tall, so when he falls big.
Right.
But he was always determined. And I've got somewhere I found a picture in a move, not this move, but the move before this. I found a picture of he and I training a group when I was literally 21 and he was 20, something close to that.
Oh my gosh.
Nutty stuff. But I think his departure was very similar to the time when I kind of moved into that role, because I do remember him calling and going, "Hey, I want you to come and take my fire walk." And I remember Rohn and I kind of glancing at each other going, "Fire walking, really, Tony?
Right.
Really? No, hey, I'm busy that day. I got to do my hair or something. I got laundry to do. I can't come and walk on fire."
Yeah.
And we kind of chuckled at the whole thing until, of course, it began to get a lot of publicity, and the rest is history, as they say. He's done incredibly well. He's still a very good friend of mine. In fact, we just got him booked to speak for an event of ours and all that. So
that is okay. So you used to go around and sell tickets for Jim Rohn seminars, correct?
I did. Yep, absolutely.
And do you this just because I'm a nerd, and our listeners and watchers may not, do you remember the clothes? Ladies and gentlemen, I want to let you know that these tickets used to be $999, but if we can get 10 of you, just 10 of you today to buy, did you do anything like that? Was there any canned stuff that can come back to you? I'd just love to hear.
No.
Okay, it was too
It wasn't.
long.
First of all, it was $35, and,
Oh
and
my
$35 in
God.
1976 was like, must have been. I mean, by today's standards, $200 or whatever. Yeah, it was $35, right? So
You
so
were selling
literally,
$35 tickets to Jim Rohn
Yeah.
seminars. Holy crap.
Yep. Evening programs. But I think the biggest thing there is, I just remember that we showed a funny part. We had an 8mm film, an
I
eight
love it.
millimeter projector that we would carry. So we had to do the intro, had to remember your name, have to remember me enough to introduce, and then go watch Jim. And then you push the button,
Boom.
and it went for 15 minutes. And then we
Wow.
had the close. And, if
Yeah.
you're ever thinking about the things you're not getting accomplished, and, some of the just kind of went after the pain points, and then whatever it was, and we're doing it at the South Coast Plaza, and you could come and join us for only 35 bones. It wasn't that, but it was something like that. It was a pretty simple deal.
I'd have loved it, though.
Deal.
I'd have loved it. And
Yep.
And then you used to go from market to market, right? Would you go stay in crappy hotels?
No, we did no.
It was
No. We didn't
all
do
in
that.
LA.
I did that in my other company. My next company, we did the same thing. Only we had travelers staying in hotels and all that. No, I lived in Orange and LA County and was able to just stay in Southern California my whole life.
Right. So when you look, you've obviously been surrounded by lots and lots of excellent people, and there's lots to learn from people who are excellent. But there's also lots to learn from people that aren't excellent, that maybe are hurting, that maybe have had a financial reversal. I'd love to know what did you learn from failure? And the second thing I'd like to know is, who have you worked with in your life where you went, man, that person's hurting, and then boom, it all turned around for them? Like, who's the greatest example of positive attitude for you that's been a success? We may or may not know them, but what I'm looking for is a story of turnaround for our gappers, our listeners, where they go, oh boy, I'll never forget. Don told me about somebody that was in the shitter, and now they're killing it, right? I'm sure you know plenty.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of some of the best stories. I mean, we did have a lot of people that did turnarounds, but I ended up spending a lot of my time in the real estate space, and in that world, people that were struggling. I mean, just struggling have many years, and finally turned around. One of them that is just a remarkable story, and I just talked to him about a month and a half ago, is Jay Canone. But Jay was this fun story. He came to me when he was struggling, had as I remember, 5 kids. I'm pretty sure 5 kids. It could have been 6, but it was a lot of kids, living in an 1,100 square foot home for all his life, working his butt off in real estate. And his dad was in real estate, so he always thought he should be there. And he also thought he should be a success. And the reality was he was not. He was not knocking out of the park. He was getting his butt kicked. And he came to one of our programs. And one of the things that happened is he invested heavily what he didn't have. He just started running up credit cards and like, I believe. And I remember one night he called me and he goes, I'm starving. Like, I don't know how we're going to pay any bills. I don't know how we're going to do any of this stuff. And I said, honestly, Jay, you've come this far, and I know you're on a great path. And I'm just telling you, stay the course. Just stay the course and do what you're doing, and keep working what you're doing, and watch what happens. And 2 months later, he calls me and he goes, all right, you got to call me. This call is not like those other ones. This is a different call. And he said literally that the faucet just opened, and his listing, and it just went crazy. I don't know if you can see that on yours, but
What's that?
Can you see that? Okay, you can't see that. Up on my screen, I've got a code, an Apple ID code that came in.
Oh,
I love
hilarious.
Technology.
Yeah, it's all good.
No, but he really hits this thing, and just like it explodes. So the funny story is, he goes from 1,100 square feet with all his kids, and 3 years later he buys a 9,000 square foot home.
Oh my gosh!
And when he calls me, he goes, "You got to see this. You got to see this." He said, "The fountain in front of Caesar's Palace? Mine is bigger."
Oh my gosh! Unbelievable! And he was he was a student of yours.
He was a student of mine. Yeah. He
Yeah.
was a student of mine. And a fun ending to that story too, because he was a friend, and we'd, kept in touch for all these years. I mean, it's been 20 years. But one of the things that he did is he really wanted to meet Jim Rohn. And when Jim was doing what we assumed would be his last final public program.
Yes.
In Phoenix, Arizona. I said, Jay, fly out, bring your wife. And we went down and I introduced them and got them to meet. So he was a huge Rohn fan, a little bit like you were saying.
Yes. Yeah.
Fun story.
What do you think, what is the difference between success and failure for most people?
A lot of it is the determination, that attitude. I mean, your attitude is the major function, period. Skills come and go. You can be great. I know people with lacking skills that kill it. I know people with awesome skills that are not making it. And the biggest difference is going to be attitude. So honestly, that's not because it's your show. I'm just telling you that in the end, that's exactly what it is. And I think the biggest thing that I saw with people like Jay is a lot of it had to do with their own internal beliefs. So we still deal with this all the time in our trainings and programs, and of course, success. It really becomes the inner, and when they believe it on the inside and they start changing on the inside, right, the outer results have to change. They just do, right? They just do. So it first is an internal job, then an external job. And most of us, and Rohn said, work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Most of us are working harder and harder and harder and harder on our work. Boy, we just put in a few more hours, but just do another thing or two. And nothing wrong with that, because the perseverance and the hard work pays off. But if you still don't believe inside, it doesn't matter. Right. When it pops for you, you get luckier and luckier when you put yourself in the right mindset.
Attitude booster number 8, love adversity. And we all know that perseverance, right, is the mother, or actually adversity is the mother of perseverance, right? We cannot become perseverers unless we love adversity, which we talk about, and we did 4 shows on. How that begs the question then, how does somebody change their insides, right? Somebody that's struggling right now, that's listening, what's your advice to them when they're going, yeah, Don, that's great. I need to change the way I think inside. Appreciate it. Now,
my life sucks.
How the hell do I do that? So tell me some of the ways that you found other people have done it, or maybe you yourself.
Yeah. A number of things, but I will tell you, reading influences of those around you. And in our today's world, we got podcasts like yours. Yeah. We have shows and podcasts and YouTube. I mean, good grief. We have so much content that we can absorb, and people just don't watch. And it's because they, if you really want it today, it's super simple. Then you had to go find a guru. You had to go find somebody that was going to be in your life. Today, it's like they're all around. And even the gurus of or the followers of gurus, I mean, even the 3 and 5 and 10 generations down, they've got something to say that we need to hear if we're really in that place.
Right.
And I think that we've got to read. I remember in fact, we were just talking about this the other day, this little teeny book. It was probably that big, and it was called Think Grow Rich, that too, As a Man Thinketh. You remember that book? Have you ever seen that?
I have it in my library.
Okay. So it's a little teeny book. I mean, it's like you could read it in 30 minutes, like even if you're a slow reader, 30 minutes.
Yep.
And I used to carry that in my jacket pocket, that red jacket that you've got, the beautiful jacket. I put it in my coat pocket, and I pull that sucker out, and literally it was like the Bible. People said, just open it up and boom, there's a magic message that has to do with exactly what I'm going through with today. And I found that was true so much of the time. And that was my little book for keeping on track. But man, Think and Grow Rich. I mean, Glenn, let's face it, Think and Grow Rich was one of the founding, nothing better. And
little tough to read. That's why I love your caveat on As a Man Think. Who wrote that? Was it Swift?
No, James Allen.
James Allen, Think and Grow Rich. Gappers, go buy it.
No. Yes, James Allen, As a Man Thinketh.
As a Man Thinketh. That's what it was. Right.
Yeah,
As a Man
I did
Thinketh.
the same thing.
Yeah.
As a Man Thinketh. It's the sweetest little book ever. And, but I mean, honestly, it was about reading. It was about getting around. I mean, one of the things that Rohn said was, it's about the people you're around, the influences of the people you're around. And we've heard it many times. Your income's going to be the average of the 5 people you hang around most of the time. I mean, there's a lot of cliches, but the reality is, look at it. I mean, I told you we were living in Puerto Rico, and part of that is you look around and you go, wow, look at who we're around here. It's like our expectations just begin to grow because we're around people that are playing, at a big level, but at a bigger level, and then a bigger level. And I think that's really what it comes down to, is how do we get around the people? And if you're not around the people, then you're you're going to go buy the book by the people. You're going to go listen to the podcast by the people that are doing this stuff.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. Sounds like I need to get your whole neighborhood on my podcast when it's all said and done. Okay. Hey, so there was an old rumor. Did Jim Rohn like to have a scotch every now and then after he spoke? I'd heard that before. I know he couldn't have been a big drinker as successful he was, but they said, he used to like to have it. Yeah, at all.
I never knew him to have scotch. He usually had like a Grand Marnier or a cognac. Or
no kidding.
Something in that range.
Well,
that was my smoking cigars or whatever. That's what we used to do together, right?
You used to smoke cigars. No kidding. Talk to me a little.
Not all the time, just every so often.
You're right. Moderation.
In moderation. I don't make it a habit.
Tell me what it was like, or what was the attitude when your real estate training company went freaking berserk, right? I mean, like, you guys, like a million realtors, right? And Hobbs Herder, and you were producing Tony Robbins content, if I remember. Is that right or no?
No.
But Hobbs Herder, who were some of the big wigs that you did? And just like, tell me about that whole experience, man. You guys were crushing it.
Well, Hobbs Herder was first an accident, and then, the old thing about preparation, meeting opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Because we honestly, when I left Rohn, I left under tough times because I didn't want to leave Jim at all, and he married a woman who I just didn't care for. We've healed since then, but he married a gal, and he would come home, or he'd come back to the office the next day and go, "I've been thinking about the decision we made yesterday, and I've been thinking we should do it."
Boy.
I'd be like, "You're not thinking. It's somebody else thinking."
Yeah.
Anyway, I couldn't get through that, and honestly, I didn't even know how to deal with it communications wise, and I just resigned.
Interesting.
And then I was off trying to figure out what the heck am I going to do now that I don't have a job, and I don't have a thing that I love doing and all that. So a partner and I got together and we started a company, and we were looking for something that was like, what are we going to talk about that isn't Ziggs and Rohns and Nightingales and all our heroes? How do we have an original thought? And we started down a path with some unoriginal stuff that was kind of put together. That's what part of what makes it original is just the way you frame things, right? And so that was good. But we had a piece on personal branding and personal marketing, and in real estate that was unheard of.
Right.
And people were joining Century 21 to wear a gold coat, and they were joining ERA to wear a powder blue, a polyester piece of horrible clothing, and they were going with the company brand. And we came along and said,
personal.
Glenn, if they don't call you and ask you for, if they don't call you directly, if they don't ask for you, you're with the number one company in the world and you're still broke.
Right.
And so we really started down that path, and people started to, like, wow, that's it. And we just kept growing that. So part of it was we lucked into it. And then secondarily, we kind of saw it and saw what the trend was happening, and we saw the explosion and put everything into that. So we built an ad agency that was going to do the personal marketing, personal branding of all those people. And we started having, we were doing 15, 20,000 campaigns a year for individual realtors, and having 50,000 people and more a year going through our programs. And we charged outrageous money by considering what was normal in the industry. We were outrageous in our prices, and people just heard we were so good that they had to come. And so, we kind of walked into that one, and it turned out great. It was phenomenal. And of course the success was, we didn't expect it. And I remember telling my partner one day, I said, if I ever get, we knew a lot of the big speakers, and I said, if I ever get, that ego attitude, just slug me. Would you just pop me in the face and remind me that I'm, just a guy. And, but we managed to keep most of that humility and did pretty well during that time. So it was fun. It was kind of like being a junior rock star. We didn't have.
Go ahead.
Tony Robbins said to me one day, several years back, because he's in a different place now. But at that time he said, I've got just the right amount of fame. Like I can go into a restaurant and eat, and I don't get bugged by everybody like an actor might. But he said, it's nice to have some fame. And I think we were kind of in that place where, we had enough that I could be in Europe and somebody would walk up and say, I went to your program back in, but I didn't have to live under the, duress of people bugging me forever. It was great.
As I entered into the real estate business at 18, right, and did the Mike Ferry Superstar Retreats and Howard Brinton and all those guys. And I mean, when you just said, and I hopefully you're okay with me saying this, but you guys were the fathers of personal freaking branding. Like when I was 22, I bought my company when I was 23. Like, it was big, personal branding, personal videos. I found one of my old VCR cassettes, with me on video. Hi, this is Glenn, Wow. So that's a big deal. Like, that's still happening, personal branding. But I almost wonder.
Change the industry entirely.
Completely change the industry. Do you see personal branding continuing to be the driver, or is there something now that's changing things, like social media, like celebrity? I'm a big believer. What I try to do is make agents famous. I teach agents how to become famous in their market. So celebrity is a big one. Anything like that, or any tweak of what you were doing?
Well, it is. It's the same thing. I could do the same program. The difference is the methods are different. So the mediums changed. Right? We've got more opportunities. It's still the brand called you. And it's funny because you're asking a great question, Glenn, because if you've got listeners who are building a small business, whatever, social media, and they go, well, you got to be personal, and you got to make it like show your heart. And we were saying that in '86. That's what it was always about. Right. It was always not, let me tell you how great I am. It was always about, let me tell you who I am.
Right.
And when you tell them who you are and they go, wow, I really like him. I really like her. I really like their style. I like what they stand for, the life messages and all that stuff. That's when people bond. And in today's world, it just spreads faster because it's of social media, right? We've got more methodology for that viral stuff to happen. Mm-hmm. I was laughing the other day. I may have said this to you even. Viral marketing, or shall we say social media back in the day was, my gosh, we went to Cleveland, spoke for 500 people and told them to tell a lot of people that they liked us. That was social media.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Right? There was nothing. So today we've really got the ability to use those personal marketing skills and tell a story and make the connection on a human level. And that's where people bond and become your followers. I hate to say that. I don't mean that in any bad sense.
Good.
But your followers.
Yes.
Because they love who you are and they love what you expose and how they know you and the heart that you have.
And that's called shared values, right? It's all about really creating that shared value between you and a prospect. And that's a whole another thing that I love to discuss is you can build a real estate business today for free. Like, why people pay anymore, why they even pay to do their real estate business is beyond me. So I all you realtors that listen to me, go to Source of Sales. I've been doing, I don't know if you've been seeing, I know you joined, thank you, but I do how to build your business for free every day. Stop paying people because, my God, the times we're in are unreal.
Video's big, and those VHS are now, we can just pop a quick YouTube or a quick, shoot a quick live and we're off to the races. And again, let's do it. So,
Don, what I'd love to know is what was the biggest sale, the funnest sale, or the biggest presentation you've ever done?
I'll tell you the funnest. I'll tell you one that I think you'll like a lot on the funnest side, and that was a guy who I'm still friends with. He's in his mid to late 70s. Still friends with him. He was vice president of a big real estate company way back in the day. This is the Jim Rohn era. I walked in to sell him a program, and I had never received a check this large because it was going to be like $1,000 check. I never had gotten that. All my checks were $35, and I was about to get $1,000 check.
Wow.
And I walked into Steve's office. We had a conversation. He goes, you know what? I really want to think about it. I said, do you need help making a decision? And he said, yeah, I guess I could use some help. And I reached into his briefcase, which was sitting open on his desk, days of briefcases, reached into his desk, pulled his checkbook out, sat it in front of him, and said, write the check.
Wow. Really?
And he wrote the check. And we have been friends, and I've spoken for his companies. Like, I can't even tell you how many times, like 20, 30 times through the years.
We're longtime
friends.
He probably loves telling that story, I would think,
Yeah. For me, it was like, oh my gosh, it worked.
Right.
It was crazy, right?
Well,
biggest presentation was, speaking for conventions, 10,000, 11,000, 12,000 people. Very fun. When you hear ladies and gentlemen, you hear yourself and you're seeing yourself on the big screen.
Wow.
That's always fun, right? That stuff's pumps me up. So we have a lot of fun with things like that.
Well, hopefully we can get you back on the stage. And then, I wanted to just touch on everything that you had done. And I know we're running short on time, so I'm going to make
I'm watching that.
I know you are. I want to know your thoughts on the challenge that is set before you today, becoming the president of Success Magazine, Success Enterprises. What's your attitude with that? And what do you hope? What's that indelible change that you want to use with that medium, with all those followers and subscribers?
Well, we're fortunate. We have a lot of subscribers. We have a whole bunch of social media followers, and Jim Rohn's part of that. We bought. How weird is this, right? All these years later, the company ends up buying Jim Rohn's library when he's getting sick and preparing to pass, and Kyle Wilson, and he sell the library to Success. So now we've got that. So I go from starting my career to finishing my career, but it is unbelievable, right? And I think there's people don't know this. It's a 123-year-old publication.
Yeah.
123 years of history. The biggest names in the personal development field, when it was not called personal development, when it was almost mystical, when it was weird thought, new thought, all those words that were used, that's what was going on with Success. And we're really excited about the success.com brand. I mean, obviously, that's not a bad domain to have, right?
Right.
It's a pretty good one. And what I really think is that we need to honor the tradition of this publication, because it has changed lives. Anybody I talk to that's in, like you and I, any of us in that era, they're all like, oh yeah, I've been reading that for years. Oh yeah, I was still subscribed. Oh yeah, it's like, it was part of my early day reading. It was every month, I guarantee Tony Robbins and I were reading that book, reading that magazine, and talking about the articles.
Yeah. And
so for me, it's like coming home, and there's a huge responsibility that I feel, but I also see the opportunity because we have so much that we can give from the resources. And we're building a coaching company. We're building so many new courses. We've got a lot of things. I can't spill the beans on all of it, but there's some really cool stuff coming that nobody will see coming, that will not be, would not have been natural in the mind, and yet will be such a great way of holding this brand up and letting people be part of the, I don't want to say legendary, but this historic and awesome brand. So we're excited about it.
I can't help but think God has a touch in this, considering the life you've had, the people you've touched, the audiences you've spoken to, that you are now the captain of this ship. And as a subscriber and a reader and a listener, I'm thrilled that you're at the helm, and I'm really, really excited to see what you do. So Gappers, if you are not subscribed to Success Magazine, you need to get on this. You want to change your attitude. You want to get from who you are to who you want to become, from where you are to where you want to be. I'm telling you, Success will do it. Now, Don, I mentioned. Go ahead.
I want to say one thing, Glenn.
Yes.
I want to say one thing. There's another Glenn in my world, and his name is Glenn Sanford, and I think you know Glenn.
I do. And He's on our podcast.
Glenn was the one. I thought so. Glenn was the one who made this thing happen. He's the one that saw the vision for Success and brought me to it, and just said, "Hey, let's put these two things together." So I really want to acknowledge that, because, man, if it wasn't for that, there would not be this opportunity, and I'm just so enlivened by it that I just wanted to give that acknowledgement.
Yeah, and I can't, Glenn was fabulous. We really talked about innovating and influencing with him. I did more of a history angle with you, and I would love to know, why don't you just give me a quick sentence if you can. What does it mean to be an innovator, right, to you?
Boy, I'm telling you, he's a great example. I said the other day, you look at Glenn and you say, he's out of the box. Well, in fact, he's so far out of the box, you can't even find the box. Well, the box is over there and he's over here. It's, innovation is about thinking about what hasn't been done. And I always ask the question, first of all, who do you have to be to achieve what you want? And the second part is, how would you beat you at your own game? How would you beat you no matter how good you are?
Wow.
How would you beat you? Because that conversation leads to innovation. It leads to, here's what I would do different than what's been done already. And of course, in real estate, I've asked people for a long time, if you didn't know there were buyers and sellers, and somebody said, boy, these people want to buy and some people want to sell. And what would it look like if you were to build the business from scratch? It would look very different than it does.
Yeah.
Right? So innovation sometimes is trying to get a fresh picture of what it is you really do, and not just following along the path that's been done for years.
Right, and that's defined by a lifetime innovator for season 2 on the Get Attitude podcast, which is all about influencing and innovating. I want to do knowledge through the decades. Do you have 5 minutes for me?
I do.
Nice. Thank you. So I talked to you a little bit about this. This is kind of our trademark here at the Get Attitude podcast, where we walk you through your life to learn the attitude lesson. Now, some of our guests are eccentric enough to believe they remember the day they were born. But what we want to do is walk you through your life and get the attitude lessons at certain benchmarks, which are basically the decades. So whether you remember or not, I'd love to know the attitude lesson that is there when you think of birth or childbirth.
New beginnings, fresh everything, start from scratch. And by the way, we get a chance to be rebirthed every single day.
Right. So that's a profound thought. Ladies and gentlemen, gappers, grab onto that one. You know what? Every time you open your eyes, it's a new day. It's a new birth. Okay. And to truly feel like you were born again every day. Don, that's good. Nobody's gotten there. I want you to think about yourself when you were 10 years old. That would have put you in 3rd or 4th grade. And I'd love to know if you remember your teachers, your schools, whatever. What do you remember about being 10, and what was the attitude lesson that you learned?
Wow, I was a great student. I loved being a brown noser to the teachers. I knew that if they liked me, that would make it much easier.
Sales guy. There you go. Right. Who needs Myers-Briggs?
Frankly, that's really funny because I used to win all the chocolate selling contests and all that stuff.
Oh, did you?
At that age, I swear to God, I did. And so it's very funny. Yeah. I think for me, that was a little bit of a tough time. However, my parents were divorcing in that range. And so they were, that was a messy time. And my dad was kind of a tough character. He had a real rage challenge. And so, it wasn't an easy part of my life during that time.
Sure.
But I remember special times about it and mostly around teachers.
Oh, that's cool. Right. So the power of an influencer to you. How about that coming out? That's great.
Yeah.
Do you have siblings?
I don't. Only child.
Only child. I'll be doggone. All right. So now you're 20 years old. You're not in college and you're sitting there rocking it with Jim Rohn. Wow. Like, what was the attitude lesson? I mean, I can only imagine you have 100 of them, but what's the attitude lesson at 20 that hit you over the head?
Between 20 and 21 that year, I made $100,000, Glenn.
Oh, geez.
And so again, everybody always went, I want to make 6 figures. Even today, I want to make 6 figures. Right. I'm like, it's not worth anything anymore. But anyway, it is for sure, of course. But I made $100,000 that year. And I remember Rohn saying to me, great job, Donald. And he always called me by my full name. He's always, great job, Donald. And he said, now figure out how to do it in half the time.
Wow.
And so what I learned in that moment was the value of time. If I hadn't already discovered how important time was, the biggest difference between the most successful and the average is the way they use their time.
Sure.
And that if you can figure out how to do something once, you can compress that into less. And so once you've done it, you know how to do it faster.
Yeah.
Right. And that goes for everything.
Yeah. And as Tony says at the many UPWs I've been to, right, is it possible to make 10 times the money in the same amount of time, right?
Absolutely.
So powerful, and the key to getting rich, right? At least financially. Right. Let's talk about 30, right? So now you've left Rohn, you're 30, you're probably right. God, 30, doesn't that seem so young? Oh my God. What were you doing at 30? I think you were Hobbs Herder then. And what was your attitude lessons at 30?
Oh my gosh.
Do you remember your 30th birthday?
I don't.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Nobody does.
No.
I know.
Isn't that weird? No, I don't. I definitely was on a big cycle at that time. And I think probably that era, I don't know about that year, but that era would have been largely about figuring out how to keep growing. I'll give you my hindsight lesson, and that would be to keep growing, to keep up with the financial growth.
Right.
So Rohn used to have this line about if it grows out, if it expands and you don't grow out to be where it is, it'll come back where you are. And I think that was a time when I was really feeling that, like there was an element of expansion and retraction and contraction. And it was a lot of, I'm not big enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not enough to do this and allow this success to happen. So for me, that was a lot of the learning around that time.
That is like life-changing. So what you're saying is, especially for real estate agents, loan originators, especially during this time, I just closed $800,000, right? And I think what you were saying is that you have to grow as a $1.6 million person in order to take that 800 to 1.6. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you've got to grow to keep becoming the person that would earn that money.
Right.
And then in large part, there is a part of that which is the inner beliefs that you're having to, take the layers of the onion and peel back and peel back and peel back to get to the core of how great you really are. We are created by God to be just amazing. And then we start believing stuff that we've been told.
Right.
And so to keep allowing yourself to achieve more, to allow yourself to earn more than your parents, or to whatever those beliefs are, those things that we hold ourselves back with, right?
Yeah, I was at an open house Sunday down in Florida, and the agent looks at me and he goes, I almost feel bad considering how bad everybody's doing. They're in Southwest Florida. I just got back last night. He's like, God, I almost want to apologize to these people. And I'm going, ooh. So the successes that we're having, chances are half of those people are going to pull back. Let's go to age 40.
Wow.
Age
rock
40.
Rock and roll, and keep your sanity and keep your humility, for sure. We were at the, I won't say the peak, but we were darn close to a peak of that era for me. And it was about keeping humble and not letting our heads get big and making smart moves, not like the brash, bold, don't you know who I am? I'm invincible. Because we had those thoughts. We did have those thoughts.
I'm sure it's natural. What's the number one lesson on humility, quote on humility, or what? Just give us something, Don. I know you got it in you that we can take about being humble.
Wow, it just come from service instead of coming from the ego, and come from a place of giving instead of from a place of taking, and come from a place of remembering why you're here, why I was here to give and to help people change their worlds, and to influence, not to collect, and not just to be a taker.
Cool. Yeah. Joe Wright said, he was a professional football player we interviewed. He said, I had coaches that were transformational and I had coaches that were transactional. That was his answer. And he said, I always try to be a transformational person. Okay. The big 5-0 hits. Do you remember your 50th birthday party? Did it mean anything to you? And what's the attitude lesson at 50?
It did, and it was a time that I had just, in essence, stepped out and retired.
Wow.
So I had really come to a place where I wanted to get off that treadmill and take a couple days to think. And it was powerful. It was hard because I didn't have, there's the question, Glenn, that's who are you when you don't have this? Who are you when you don't have, the success adornments and everybody going, oh, you're awesome and you rock, whatever. Who are you when that's not happening? And I was dealing with a lot of the internal, like, who am I going to be when I now grow up? And that was happening at 50. That was really the stage I was in.
And so that, again, you never stop growing, but certainly our gappers fight through the same thing. Who am I at our next step? We have people that are listening that are involved in personal reversals, financial reversals, emotional reversals, relationship. You're going to, it's a constant reinvention and redefinition of who you are. So very, very powerful. How about, are you 60 yet?
I am, and I want to say one thing, because you talked about the gappers that are making their comebacks and are doing great work now to make that happen. And I lost a ton. I mean, I lost a lot of my financial wealth during that next little gap right after that time.
Really?
And, yep. And it was a very challenging time to think, okay, now I thought I was done. I thought all this stuff was, going to be super easy, and it was not. And, having to dust myself off, and then even more than that, to get back into performance. Not, I mean performance like stage performance. I mean, get back into gear. When I started going down, it was almost like, oh my gosh. And I started coming from a place of fear instead of from a place of certainty, which is where I lived my whole life.
Sure.
And so it took a number of years to get back out of that. And it wasn't until my mid 50s, and now I'm 62. And, we've climbed back into some fun stuff. And here we are in Puerto Rico enjoying a different life, and have a very successful real estate business. And we have a lot of things. I've got the love of my life upstairs, and 2 puppies, one of which you've heard very clearly the last
She made her first dog appearance on The Gap. I love it.
And and a kitty. And so we flew them all over first class, and it was anything but first class. But we love our little family here, and we've got friends and a very big life, and it's all been remarkable. And that's happened in just the last maybe 4, 5.
That's cool. So the attitude lesson at 60, your message of hope for our gappers who are listening from the great Don Hobbs. This guy has been around, guys. Tell us your outlook for not only your life, but the life of the people that live, that are listening to you today, that are saying, this guy might have just closed the gap for me. What's the message of hope for them?
You have to remember, this is my message at the end of almost every one of my talks. Remember who you are. Remember who you really are. I mean, the hard part is we get lost in what's happening and think that's who we are. By the way, success or failure, either one. We think this is who I am, and success and failure, these are not who we are at a core level, heart, soul, and we were made in God's image and God's likeness, and given such great gifts, and the life that we've been given is such an amazing thing. And so we lose sight of that, getting lost in stupid little things and judging ourselves against other people. And boy, I'll tell you, that was one of the biggest for me, was judging myself against myself previous.
Yes.
Beating myself up over the stupidity of certain moves that I made, and then also comparing myself to others. And it's really tough. You compare yourself to others, you will be, it's one of the challenges with social media, is if you look at the lives that are all shown there, which is kind of the best of film reel.
Right. It's your sizzle reel. Right.
It's everybody's sizzle reel. And if you really compare yourself to that, generally speaking, you will feel less than if you're inclined at all that way. And so I would say, remember who you are. You're way bigger than you know. I promise, you're way bigger than you know.
That is so cool. Don Hobbs, I want to thank you for giving us just a killer podcast today. And I think your message of be true to yourself. I want to know, is there a question you can ask yourself besides who am I? Because we all know the quality of our life is determined by the quality of questions we ask ourselves. Do you have certain questions that you ask yourself that make a difference? Or at least one?
What more can I do with this situation? If it's a tough one, what more can I do with this situation? What's possible in this moment? What can I do? I put the emphasis on what can I do?
Yes.
What can I do now? What can't I do? Because a lot of people get lost in, well, you can't do, and you can't, even right now with masks and virus and stuff, right? It's a lot of I can'ts. And I'm telling you guys, if you really look, we just went through an election, and I made a big point of this, Glenn, coming into it. I said, I'm not going to take sides. I'm not trying to be political here. I'm just saying we have survived 246 years of presidents.
Right.
And we have been with Democrats and Republicans. We have been through every possible socioeconomic cycle, every economic cycle. And I'm telling you, what goes on out there has nothing to do with your choices about yourself and what you will do for yourself and your family and the people that are most important to you. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, amen. There is the world and there is your world. So I suggest everybody start working on their world. I suggest everybody go follow Don Hobbs on social media. Get to his website. If you're looking for a keynote speaker, I don't know, I'm sure you still will keynote whenever the things come up. I've heard him speak. I actually had to speak after him. It was always a little intimidating when you get an old legend in front of you. But hopefully I pulled it off.
Thanks, Glenn.
But follow Don look at his stuff, consume his content, and I promise you, your attitude will improve. Don Hobbs, it was great having you on The Gap for season 2. And
Bill, thank you.
Hey, may God bless you, and much luck with Success Enterprise or Success Magazine. I know you're going to do great.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, buddy.
Keep doing your good work.
I will. Don't you worry. We'll see you, buddy.